Unspoken bonds, if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing in my cramped apartment bathroom, heart hammering like a bass drum, with my best friend on the other side of a fogged-up glass door, I'd have called it a ridiculous daydream, something spun out of late-night solitude. But looking back, maybe the clues were always there. Tiny, fleeting moments I brushed off, tucked away behind sarcastic banter, or drowned in the kind of quiet only fear can build. Leo and I had been inseparable since sophomore year of high school. We met in art class, bonding over our shared inability to sketch a decent still life, our apples looking more like lumpy potatoes. We spent the rest of the period joking about it, earning glares from the teacher but cementing the start of something unbreakable. From that day, we were a unit, tied together by late-night talks, spontaneous road trips, and a mutual love for bad horror movies. Leo was everything I wasn't. He was bold, magnetic, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and have everyone's attention without trying. I was the opposite, reserved, analytical, the guy who'd rather listen than lead, always ready with a quip or a favor but never the center of the story. Despite our differences, we fit. Our friendship was built on years of shared history, sneaking into concerts, binge-watching entire seasons of shows in one weekend, and spending summers sprawled on the grass by the lake, debating everything from alien invasions to the best burger joint in town. Somewhere along the way, though, I started noticing things. The way his grin could make my chest tighten. The way his casual touches, a hand on my arm, a playful shove, lingered in my mind longer than they should have. I pushed it down, buried it deep. Leo was straight. He had a string of girlfriends, each one a new chapter in his endless dating saga, complete with stories of late-night texts or dramatic breakups. I'd listen, nod, laugh when I was supposed to, all while wrestling with a pang I refused to name. Admitting it to myself felt dangerous. Admitting it to him? Unthinkable. Our friendship was too important, too solid to risk on something that might just be in my head. Besides, Leo never gave any clear signs he felt anything beyond friendship. Or so I thought. Lately, though, there were moments that made me question everything. Like the time we went hiking last fall, and he grabbed my hand to pull me up a steep trail, holding on a beat longer than necessary, his eyes catching mine with an intensity I couldn't read. Or the night we got caught in a rainstorm and ended up sharing a blanket on my couch, his shoulder pressed against mine, neither of us moving away even after the storm passed. We didn't talk about it. We never did. We just kept going, pretending nothing had changed, even though something unspoken was starting to take shape. That night, though, everything began to shift in a way I couldn't ignore. It started like any other evening. We'd hit the gym after work, joking through a lazy workout, challenging each other to deadlifts we had no business attempting. Afterward, we grabbed burritos from the food truck down the street and headed to my place, our usual routine. Leo had been crashing at my apartment so often it barely registered anymore. He'd toss his gym bag by the door, kick off his sneakers, and sprawl across my couch like it was his own. I didn't mind. His presence filled the space in a way that made it feel less empty, less like I was just drifting through my days. We threw on a random action movie, but as usual we barely watched it, too busy cracking jokes and debating whether the hero's one-liners were genius or cringe. When the credits rolled, neither of us moved. Leo stayed where he was, one leg bent, his arm draped lazily across the back of the couch, his fingers close enough to brush my shoulder if I leaned back. "Mind if I use your shower?" he asked, stretching with a yawn. His hoodie rode up slightly, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin, and I looked away, hoping he didn't notice how fast I turned my head. "Yeah, go for it," I said, aiming for casual. "Towels are in the closet, same as always." He grinned, that easy, lopsided smile that always made my stomach flip. "Don't get too lonely without me, Nate," I snorted, rolling my eyes. "I'll survive, trust me," he laughed, grabbing his bag and heading for the bathroom. The door clicked shut, and a moment later the sound of running water filled the apartment. I sat there staring at the blank TV screen, my mind a mess. The faint hiss of the shower mingled with the hum of the fridge, but it couldn't drown out my thoughts. Steam started creeping out from under the bathroom door, and suddenly the apartment felt too small, the air too thick. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through my phone, but my mind kept drifting to Leo. To the way he'd looked at me earlier, his eyes lingering just a second too long. To all the moments I'd tried so hard not to overthink. I stood, pacing between the couch and the kitchen, restless. Maybe I could grab a drink, check my email, anything to stop my brain from spiraling. But it was no use. My pulse was racing, my thoughts a jumble of what-ifs. Then, through the sound of the shower, I heard his voice. "Hey, Nate," Leo called, his voice slightly muffled but clear. "Can you grab me a towel?" "Forgot one." I froze, my eyes darting to the bathroom door. Yeah, sure," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I grabbed a towel from the closet, my hands clumsier than they should have been. Steam was curling out from the bathroom now, warm and heavy, carrying the faint scent of his body wash. "Just crack the door open," he said. "It's not locked." I hesitated, my hand hovering over the knob. "You sure?" He laughed, the sound light but with an edge I couldn't place. "Come on, man. It's not like we haven't changed in the same locker room 100 times. He wasn't wrong. We'd been through enough gym sessions, camping trips, and beach days that this shouldn't have felt like a big deal. But it did. It felt like crossing a line, like stepping into something I wasn't ready to face. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the nerves, and pushed the door open. Steam hit me like a wave, thick and warm, fogging my glasses instantly. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and for a moment I just stood there, towel clutched in my hand, trying to get my bearings. The bathroom was small, the glass shower door clouded with condensation, but I could make out Leo's silhouette behind it. Tall, lean, relaxed, like this was just another Tuesday. "Over here," he said, his voice cutting through the haze, calm but with a hint of something else. Amusement, maybe? I stepped closer, holding out the towel, my hand unsteady. He reached through the gap in the shower door, and for a split second, our fingers brushed. It was nothing, just a fleeting touch, but it sent a jolt through me, sharp and undeniable. "Thanks," he said, his voice softer now, closer. I couldn't see his face clearly through the steam, but I felt his presence, solid and real, just on the other side of the glass. "No problem," I managed, stepping back, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. I turned to leave, needing to get out of the humid, too close space before I did something stupid, like say something I couldn't take back. But as I reached the door, he spoke again. "Hey, Nate!" I stopped, glancing back, my hand still on the knob. "Yeah?" For a moment he didn't say anything. The shower kept running, the steam swirling between us, and I could have sworn the air felt heavier, charged with something neither of us had dared to name. "Nothing," he said finally, his voice almost too casual. "Just thanks." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me, and slipped out, closing the door behind me. Back in the living room, I sank onto the couch, my pulse still racing, my mind replaying that moment over and over. It was nothing, I told myself. Just a towel. Just a friend. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple anymore. Something had shifted, and whether we talked about it or not, there was no going back. It was one of those ordinary evenings that somehow felt charged with something unspoken, the kind where the weight of unshared secrets hangs in the air like humidity after a storm. I'd been crashing at my best friend Jordan's apartment for the weekend, escaping the chaos of my own place after a pipe burst and flooded everything. We'd known each other since college, roommates back then, inseparable ever since. Jordan was the steady one, the guy who always had his life together, a graphic designer with a sharp wit, a laugh that could light up a room, and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he was genuinely amused. Me? I was Lucas, the freelance writer who overthought everything, especially the feelings I'd been harboring for him for the past year. Feelings I never planned to voice because why risk ruining the best friendship I'd ever had? The bathroom door creaked open, steam billowing out like a fog machine at a concert. Jordan stepped out, water droplets tracing paths down his toned chest and arms, remnants of his post-gym shower ritual. He was towelless, caught off guard, his dark hair slicked back and dripping. "Shit, Lucas, I thought you were still out grabbing takeout," he muttered, a hint of embarrassment coloring his cheeks as he reached for the towel rack, only to find it empty. I was standing there in the hallway, having just gotten back, with a fresh towel I'd grabbed from the linen closet on impulse. My heart thudded a little too hard, stupid, really, but seeing him like that stirred up all the things I'd been burying. "Here," I said, holding it out, trying to keep my voice casual. Our fingers brushed as he took it, a spark that felt anything but accidental. It was such a small thing, but it carried weight, a shared familiarity, an unspoken acknowledgement of everything we hadn't said. "Thanks," he said quietly, his tone softer than usual, lacking the usual banter we traded like currency. I turned to step back, wanting to give him space, but his voice stopped me. "Hey, you okay there?" There was no humor this time, no teasing edge. Just raw honesty, like he'd peeled back a layer we'd both been ignoring. I hesitated, my pulse quickening. "About what? How long you felt this way?" he said steadily, his green eyes locking onto mine. "Why, you never told me." "And what happens next?" I froze. Words caught in my throat. Relief, fear, confusion, and curiosity all crashed together in my chest like waves in a storm. Memories flooded in unbidden. Late-night study sessions in our dorm, where his casual arm around my shoulder felt like home. Road trips where we'd share a tent under the stars, talking about dreams and fears until dawn. The way he'd defended me in a bar fight once, not because he was tough, but because he cared. I'd fallen for him gradually, like sinking into quicksand, slow at first, then all-consuming. But admitting it, that could shatter everything. "I didn't tell you because I was scared," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought it would change everything." "Did it?" he asked, his gaze unwavering. "I don't know yet," I whispered back, feeling exposed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't been in years. He gave the faintest smile, just a tiny quirk of his lips that I'd seen 100 times, usually when he was winning at video games or pulling off a prank. Then, finally, he wrapped the towel around his waist, securing it with a knot. His eyes never left mine as he stepped a little closer. A quiet understanding passed between us, electric and tentative. I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin, the clean scent of his sandalwood soap mingling with the steam, wrapping around me like an embrace. "You're my best friend," he said softly, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "That doesn't change even if feelings do. But if you're going to tell me something like that, I deserve honesty too." I blinked, confused, my mind racing. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully like he was navigating a minefield. "I've never thought about guys that way," he said slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. A nervous habit I'd seen when he was pitching ideas at work or confessing a bad date. "But lately, I don't know. I've been thinking about you differently. Wondering what it would mean, wondering if it wasn't just one-sided." The room seemed to tilt slightly, the fluorescent light above us buzzing faintly like white noise in my brain. I couldn't find the words to respond. Flashbacks hit me. The time we binge-watched that sci-fi series, our legs tangled under a blanket, and I'd pulled away too quickly, afraid he'd notice my racing heart. The hike last summer where he'd stripped down to swim in a lake, and I'd pretended to read a book to hide my stolen glances. Had he been feeling it too? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. He stepped closer, not invading my space, just close enough that the air between us felt different. "Charged like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. You said you didn't mean for it to happen," he added, his voice low but steady. Maybe neither did I. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I still didn't know what to say. Then he reached out, his hand brushing mine. Just a gentle touch, no pressure, no force. "Is that okay?" he asked quietly, his eyes searching mine for any sign of retreat. I nodded, too stunned to speak. His hand rested warm and steady against mine, calluses from his weekend rock climbing rough against my smoother palm. It was grounding, real in a way that cut through the haze of doubt. Even outside the shower, the air felt heavier somehow, like everything between us had shifted irrevocably. The tile beneath my feet was cold, a stark contrast to the warmth building in my chest, grounding me as my mind spun, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Jordan's green eyes stayed on mine, soft and searching, as if waiting for me to say something, anything to break the quiet. But what could I possibly say? Nothing could match the weight of that moment or the silent understanding we now shared. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My thoughts were a tangled mess, colliding and slipping away before I could form them into words. And yet, beneath all that chaos, I felt strangely calm, not relaxed exactly, but steady. Anchored to him, to the warmth of his presence, to the fact that he hadn't pulled away. He hadn't turned aside in discomfort or confusion. Instead, he'd stayed close, gentle, holding that quiet space between us like it was something precious. "Are you okay?" Jordan asked softly, his thumb lightly tracing a circle on the back of my hand. I nodded too quickly, my throat dry, my voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, I think so." His expression softened, something tender flickering behind his eyes, a vulnerability I rarely saw in him, the guy who always played it cool. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said quietly. "I just had to know." "I'm not scared," I replied, my voice steadier now as I found my footing. "Just surprised." Surprised that the walls I'd built around my heart were crumbling so easily, that the fear of rejection I'd carried like a backpack was suddenly lighter. Jordan let out a small laugh, running a hand through his damp hair, sending droplets scattering like tiny jewels. "Yeah, well, that makes two of us." He paused, glancing around the bathroom as if seeing it for the first time, the cluttered counter with his razor and my toothbrush side by side, the foggy mirror that blurred our reflections into soft outlines. It felt intimate, this shared space, a microcosm of our friendship evolving into something more. I leaned back against the cool tile wall, the humidity thick around us, making my shirt cling slightly. The rest of the world felt distant, irrelevant. The takeout bags I'd dropped in the kitchen forgotten, the city noise outside muffled by the walls. After a long pause, I asked almost to myself, "What now?" Jordan stepped a little closer, slow and unhurried, as if he wasn't ready to leave that fragile space between us. He brushed a stray drop of water from my shoulder, a small, instinctive gesture that somehow made my chest tighten, like a promise unspoken. His touch lingered for a second longer than necessary, sending a shiver down my spine. "I don't know," he admitted, his honesty hitting harder than anything else. "I've been thinking about this, about you for a while. It scared me at first, but tonight, I couldn't pretend anymore." I hesitated, the words tumbling out before I could filter them. I thought you were straight." He smiled a little crooked, a little unsure, that boyish grin that had charmed his way out of countless deadlines and into my heart. "Yeah, so did I. Maybe I still am. I don't know." He shrugged, but there was a depth to his eyes, a seriousness that belied the casual motion. "But I know what I felt just now, and I know it wasn't nothing. It's not just friendship anymore, Lucas. Not for me." My breath caught, a rush of emotion surging through me, elation mixed with the lingering sting of doubt. He wasn't saying this lightly. He wasn't just humoring me. He meant it. Every word etched with the same careful thought he put into his designs. "I've liked you for a long time," I confessed before I could stop myself, the admission freeing something inside me. "I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to lose you." "You thought I'd freak out?" he asked gently, his hand still holding mine, a lifeline in the steam-filled room. "Maybe a few months ago," I admitted, the words burning in my chest, but I pushed through them. "You don't know what you're promising," I said quietly. It's not simple. It's not what people expect. Family, friends, the world out there." Jordan tilted his head, studying me for a moment before nodding slowly. "I know," he said softly, his voice laced with resolve. "But I'm still here. I'm not running. Jordan tilted his head, studying me for a moment before nodding slowly. "I know," he said softly, his voice laced with resolve. "But I'm still here. I'm not running." The way he said it, steady, like it wasn't a question, made my chest ache with a mix of hope and trepidation. He stepped closer again, and even though we weren't fully touching, I could feel the warmth radiating from him. Smell the faint scent of clean soap still clinging to his skin, mingling with the faint trace of his cologne that always reminded me of pine forests. "I don't need you to have all the answers right now," I whispered, squeezing his hand lightly. "I just need to know you're not going to pretend this didn't happen." He smiled faintly, that same crooked, unsure smile that had always undone me. But this time there was something steadier behind it, a quiet determination. "I'm not pretending," he said. "I'm trying. We'll figure it out together, slowly if that's what it takes." I exhaled, something loosening in my chest, like a knot unraveling after years of being tied too tight. Okay, for a moment neither of us spoke. Steam still curled around us, making the bathroom feel smaller, softer, like a world apart from the complications waiting outside. Jordan reached out, not a grab, not a pull, just a slow open gesture, and let his fingers brush mine again, intertwining them this time. "Then let's start there," he said quietly. "Just here, right now. No labels, no plans, just us." I looked at him, at the damp strands of hair clinging to his forehead, at the way his towel hung low on his hips, at the earnestness in his eyes that made my heart swell. And for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a possibility, a new beginning. The air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth as I stood on the balcony, my hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. The city lights blurred in the distance, softened by the mist rolling in from the harbor. Elias was beside me, his dark brown eyes catching the glow of the streetlights below. There was a nervous energy in the way he shifted his weight, his fingers tapping lightly against the railing. I felt something stir in me, a quiet shift, like the first crack of dawn breaking through a long night. For once, I wasn't waiting for the moment to shatter, for him to pull back, or for my own doubts to creep in. "Just us," he said softly, echoing my earlier words. His voice was low, almost swallowed by the hum of the city. I glanced at him, and for a moment, with the cool night air brushing against our skin and our shoulders barely touching, it felt like enough. "I don't know how far this goes," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper, "or if I'm the only one feeling it this way." My heart thudded, an unsteady rhythm that seemed too loud in the quiet night. Elias turned to face me fully, his expression shifting. The playful glint in his eyes was gone, replaced by something deeper, more serious. He looked at me the way he did when he was piecing together something important, like when he'd spend hours sketching in his notebook, trying to capture a moment just right. "It's not just you," he said, his voice steady but soft, like he was afraid to break the moment. "Trust me, Nora. It's not just you." I searched his face, trying to find a hint of hesitation, a crack in his words. But his gaze held mine, unwavering, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. For the first time that night, I let myself believe this wasn't just a fleeting hope I'd conjured up. He stepped closer, moving from the railing to where I stood near the sliding glass door, my back half turned like I might slip inside and hide from whatever this was. He stopped just short of me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, the faint scent of cedar and rain clinging to his jacket. "Can I?" he asked, his voice quieter now, almost tentative, like he was asking permission to cross a line we'd both been skirting for months. I nodded, my pulse racing like a trapped bird in my chest. Elias moved closer, his hand brushing my arm before settling lightly at my waist. The touch was gentle, but it carried a weight that made my breath catch. His other hand reached up, tilting my chin so I'd meet his eyes. There was something searching in his gaze, like he was checking to make sure I was still here, that this wasn't a dream we'd both wake up from. "You're trembling," he said softly, his thumb brushing lightly against my jaw. "I know," I whispered, my voice shaking as much as my hands. "I don't mean to." "It's okay," he said, his voice warm, reassuring. He leaned forward until our foreheads touched, and for a long moment we just stayed there, breathing in sync. I was caught off guard by how vulnerable he seemed. Elias, the one who could light up a room with a single grin, who always knew the right thing to say, was just as raw, just as uncertain as I felt. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about fear. It wasn't about the risk of falling or the worry of what came next. It was about connection, about finally letting someone see the parts of me I'd kept hidden, even from myself. With Elias, it felt safer to be seen. He took a slow breath, his voice steady when he spoke. "I've wanted this for longer than I realized," he said, the words heavy with truth. I couldn't speak. I didn't need to. The air between us felt charged. Like every glance, every breath, every small movement carried a meaning only we could understand. His hand brushed mine, hesitant at first, then sure. "Tell me if you want to stop," he murmured, his eyes searching mine, and I could see he meant it. He wasn't pushing, wasn't rushing. He was giving me the space to choose. I didn't answer with words. I just reached for him, my fingers curling into the fabric of his jacket, pulling him closer. The connection that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long finally sparked to life. It wasn't about what came next or where this would lead. It was about this moment, honest, fragile, real. We laughed, nervous and breathless, as we tried to navigate this new space between us. There were moments of awkwardness, a clumsy brush of hands, a shared glance that made us both smile, but none of it felt wrong. What mattered was the way Elias looked at me, with understanding, with care, with something that felt a lot like hope. Then, suddenly, we both went quiet. The silence wasn't heavy or uncomfortable. It was full, brimming with everything we hadn't said, everything we'd spent so long pretending not to feel. Elias's hand found mine again, our fingers interlocking, holding on to something delicate but undeniable. His touch was steady now, no longer tentative. It said everything words couldn't. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." We weren't standing on the edge anymore. We were stepping past it together. I don't know who leaned in first, maybe it was both of us, but in an instant, the space between us vanished. His lips met mine, soft at first, then sure, and in that moment there was no going back. No returning to the careful friendship we'd built, no pretending this wasn't what we both wanted. The next morning, I woke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the blinds. Elias's arm was draped across my waist, his steady breathing warm against my shoulder. The room was quiet, but it wasn't heavy. It was soft, real, filled with something we'd both kept locked away for too long. I didn't move at first, just lay there, watching the light dance across the ceiling, savoring the warmth of him beside me. Eventually, Elias stirred, his arm tightening around me before he shifted slightly. "You awake?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. "Yeah," I whispered, my heart fluttering. He didn't say anything else, just let out a soft breath and stayed close. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream. But when his hand found mine, squeezing gently, I knew it was real. That morning, we didn't make grand promises or try to define what this was. We just existed, side by side, quietly figuring out what had changed. Later, Elias stood in my kitchen, barefoot and wearing one of my oversized sweaters, grinning over a cup of coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. But there was something new in his eyes, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. He looked at me like I wasn't just his friend anymore, but someone who mattered in a way we were both still learning to understand. Over the next few weeks, we kept it to ourselves. We didn't need to tell anyone, not yet. What we had was ours, still fragile, still forming. There were awkward moments, of course, hesitant reaches for each other's hands, quiet pauses filled with questions we weren't ready to ask. But Elias never pulled away. If anything, he leaned in closer. He laughed more, stayed over more, found excuses to brush his shoulder against mine, or steal a quick kiss when no one was looking. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, he'd reach for me and murmur, "I still don't know what this is, but it feels right." And I'd smile, whispering back, "That's enough for now." Because sometimes love doesn't come with a roadmap or perfect timing. Sometimes it sneaks up on you, hidden in the cracks of a friendship, layered with doubt and fear, and only shows itself when you're brave enough to face it. That night on the balcony changed everything, not just because of what happened, but because it opened a door we'd both been too scared to walk through. Now, Elias and I are still figuring it out, still learning, still growing, but we're happy. And for now, that's enough. If you've ever been in a moment like this where everything shifts and you're left wondering what comes next, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your story or advice below. It might just help someone else find their way.